All right, so here we are, day 19 of the Men in Recovery series for National Recovery Month. And I am here with my old friend, Tom Hill. Not old as in age, old as in wisdom, but also I've known you quite a while.
Yeah, we go back.
We go back and we've gone back through lots of different iterations and move parts of this movement. And you've had such a wonderful arc in your career to see you sitting there in SAMHSA and CSAT. And you really came from a very powerful advocacy place and then worked with Faces and Voices. And I'm sure I'm missing some. And then you were the interim director for CSAT for a while.
Correct.
And now you're there helping with policy and all the key policies and projects and initiatives, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm the senior advisor on addiction and recovery at SAMHSA.
How awesome is that?
Pretty cool. It's a pretty cool title.
It's an amazing title. 10 years ago, we were advocating for titles like this, and they remember when there was the whole idea of CFAR?
Exactly.
Yeah, we're getting there. Holy cow.
Our fingers are still crossed. We're still working towards it.
It's amazing, Tom. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I'm really proud of you and just so grateful for all the work that you've done. I mean, so many people have no idea all the amazing work that people have been doing for years to get us to this point where Recovery Month is now, it's not just celebrations. It's meaningful political activity, policy change, administrative impact, and it's now an international phenomenon.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
So it's been fun for me has been to kind of shift a little and move out of the recovery advocacy piece and really deep into this passion of mine of looking at men's experience of recovery. And so as my viewers all know, I start with the same question every time. And that really is, what is the greatest gift that recovery has given you to help you be the man you knew you always could be?
Great question. So much of my early recovery was really looking deep inside and realizing that I had a lot of changes to make. And one of the things that I had to come to terms was my sexual orientation. And one of the early things I did in recovery was I came out to everybody across the board. And that was such a freeing experience to me. Really, I had tamped it down for so long. And sort of like let all the shame from that evaporate. And as a result of that, that's really why I started telling people about my recovery. I started disclosing my recovery status pretty early on because I wanted people to know that I wasn't just a problem, I was also the solution. So, and coming out was such a powerful experience for me that I thought, I want to come out twice, so I did that. And I think, so coming out as a gay man, I think was a really important thing, not only for myself, but to take responsibility for that for other people as well and be a role model, a gay man in recovery, a very powerful thing. And I think, as a teenager, I had read a lot about feminism and I'd always been very feministically oriented, considered myself a feminist, but during my active using, one of the things I was a little shy about taking up my space as a man and taking my authority as a man. And when I got into recovery, so many changes happened, and I really, I learned to show up on time. I learned to be responsible. I learned to be good for my word and to be honest. I learned a lot of really important values that I didn't necessarily practice before recovery. And part of that was learning how to be a man. And, so learning how to be as tough as I needed to be while still being tender. That was really important to me. My dad was a crier, so I've always been a crier, but I had a lot of shame about being a crier. And I'm probably going to cry now because being an emotional man, I think, is a very powerful thing. And it's something that we're cut off by. I certainly was cut off by, I didn't want to show emotion. So I don't have any shame around that anymore. In fact, I think it's a strength and a very powerful strength. So I think, being a man for me, like learning how to take up space as a man in a responsible way, but in a declarative way has been really, really important to me. And I think it's served me well, and it's served my recovery well.
That is so beautifully said. You said so many different pieces. I mean, one, so you came out twice, right? So you got to be a model in the gay community for a man in recovery. We don't have to destroy ourselves from all this internalized stigma and discrimination with addiction. We can transcend that. And at the same time, it's real life, man.
Life goes on.
It's real time. I love it. Hi,
Maria.
Hola, hi. And then
Maria.
and then in the recovery community, you could be a wonderful example to get out of that dominant kind of white guy, heterosexual, because there was in that movement, there was still a lot of that dominant male privilege sort of aspect to it. And so, I mean, I hope this comes across the right way. I met you when I was about 4 years into my recovery, and I didn't know a lot of gay men. And I just remember meeting you and thinking like, wow, this guy is so amazing. Like, this guy's so powerful. He's so open about his feelings. And yet, like, he's so assertive and strong. Like, I saw you as a really balanced masculinity. And, it always impressed upon me. It scared me. I'll be honest with you. It scared me at first because I still had all my own shame about how emotional I am, about how sensitive I am. I'm a big crier. Still, a lot of people don't know that, because I've, so much trauma has kept me from being that authentic person. But I mean that sincerely when I say, like, when I first met you, it was a powerful experience for me to see that type of masculinity, because I had already done my master's research. Intellectually, I could see it. Emotionally and from a recovery standpoint, I wasn't even close.
Well, thank you for your kind words. That's very well taken.
Yeah, absolutely. So you you mentioned like the idea of being a gay man in recovery or man in recovery who happens to be gay, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. I was interviewed men for my first book, A Man's Way Through the 12 Steps, and I interviewed men of all different parts of the spectrum. And one man I interviewed was a gay man, and he said, when I came into recovery, I was so fixated on being gay, and it kept me. Other people seemed fixated on it, and I seemed fixated on it. He said, today I find myself as a man in recovery who happens to be gay, not a gay man who happens to be in recovery. And I don't know, that's not neither good or bad, but for him, I think he was wanting to say, I'm part of the recovery community, and I stand as part of the recovery community, and my identity as a gay man is a part of who I am, but it doesn't define my involvement in the recovery community. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I would frame it differently. It actually makes a lot of sense to me. I think you go through phases where different aspects of your parts of yourself are very important and need to be developed in their own sort of isolation or in their own sort of incubation, and then you figure out how to integrate that into your whole self. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the recovery process, right? So that where all the intrinsic pieces of ourselves are interlocked and we just are. So I think identity comes and goes. I could say I'm a gay man in recovery. I could say a man in recovery who happens to be gay. That doesn't really matter to me. For me, it's just that when I show up, that every part of myself is there, and I take responsibility for it, and that your opinion of any one of those parts or all of them together is your own business, because this is who I am and this is what you get.
Nice. That's beautifully said. I think for him, he was navigating that whole thing of like, he was keeping himself outside of the recovery community because he was gay, and he thought that meant he had limited opportunity to be involved. But the gift of recovery, irrespective of who we are, is it's exactly what you said, right? It's that gift of to thine own self be true. And the longer we live in that journey and the more we're true to ourselves, it really doesn't matter. I mean, there are still people in the recovery community who, whether you're being open about your recovery whether there's a certain aspect of your identity that may or may not be as accepted. But the gift is being able to model who you are and stand in the space of that, the beauty of recovery that says, I don't have to apologize for who I am. That's your work to do if you have a problem with it.
Yeah, and you said something earlier about sort of the privilege and status of white men in this society, and I think that we, as a social justice movement, we have shifted from that. I think we have a long way to go. I think in terms of our own consciousness raising about what is race and ethnicity and class and gender identity and sexual orientation, what do all those things have to do with building out a multifaceted recovery community? And that's something I've been, it's been a priority of mine since day one, that we have a movement that really is conscious of all those things and how all those things fit into our community, and that we make room for all of that. And I think, we have come a long way, but as a social movement, I think we have a long way to go.
I think you're right. And that's fun, right? For those of us who are really engaged in this, that's part of the fun.
Absolutely.
It gives us something exciting to do. It gives us a reason to wake up. It gives us an opportunity to see what else we can dig down deep and help to create. And, I would love to actually talk to you more about that, because, the way I view it is the piece of things coming full circle is almost the work that I do, focusing on men and masculinity and trauma and men. In many ways, that's like the last group to get attention because it's been the dominant group, and yet it's still 70% of the people going through services are men. And that's been a fun conversation for me to have, and then to allow for the nuances of it, because that's the evolution of this whole effort and this movement. And it's so great to know that there's a man of your experience, of your wisdom, of your consciousness. You're like a male Kathy Nugent.
One of my sheroes, yes.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's really amazing. So I know you've got another piece to do. So I always ask my guests to have the last word. So it's been a joy to connect with you. I hope we can stay in touch about some of the stuff that you're doing and that I'm doing. Happy Recovery Month. You're a big part of how we've gotten here. And as I like to say, take us home.
Thanks, Dan. One great thing about recovery is that men have to look inside themselves. Everybody does, but men have to look inside themselves and find that soft spot and find that sweet spot and find that tender spot in order to practice self-love and then to love the world in the same way. And I think that I and you and many of our male companions are sort of proud to carry that torch of having done that work, to continue doing that work, and to share that work with other men. So thanks for doing the work you do.
Thank you, and have a wonderful week.
You too, Dan. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Bye.